Hi, and welcome to Second Impressions, a Estound's web series where we break down real questions about marketing and provide business leaders with insights on important issues. I'm Trevor Heaton, and I've got my colleagues Greg Bond and Erik Wolf with me today. Gentlemen, it is truly an honor and a privilege to be joining two of the most brilliant minds in marketing. How are you doing?
Trevor, I can honestly say the pleasure is all yours.
I feel like I lost brain cells just listening to that.
Well, you got plenty to lose, and you're going to lose a few more. We got a question today. It's a tough one. This will be fun to talk about. This is from Ann Kay. She's a marketing specialist, and her question is, our director of marketing is dead set on procuring a new marketing suite that the rest of the team is unsure of. Given the investment required, how do we know if we are making the right choice? Erik, kick it off.
I would say that the first and most important thing to do whenever you're in these conversations is recognizing that software is not a strategy. Software is a tool that you use to reach a goal, an end, an objective, what have you. And so the real question that I have is, or the first thing that I would ask is number one, what does that objective look like? What are the things that we are trying to accomplish that we're not accomplishing today? I'm interested in knowing why the team is unsure of the particular product, but I'd also be interested in how they envision the product as being sort of a means to that end and in helping you reach the objective. How does owning this marketing software, how does that remove friction for your team? How does that save you time? How does that save you money? How does that help you close business? How are we connecting the software with the goals? That's the first thing that I would ask in a situation like this.
Right. I mean, it also sounds like change is hard.
Well, I think the other part is that we know that there is automation and software suites that can really help businesses, let's say in the 20 million and up dollar range, to begin to scale if like they've been hitting a ceiling because they're probably doing things that the way they were doing when they were a $4 million business, but that workload has just become like exponentially increased. And so we know that when it comes to businesses that need to scale, especially at that revenue point, that automation of some sort is probably going to be an answer. But what's happened is you have all these other businesses that aren't necessarily hitting that like break point, that are wanting to use tools prematurely, and those tools end up inhibiting their growth and getting in the way of their objectives. So you really are weighing the cost of a tool holistically, not just in terms of how much it will cost, which is becoming much more relevant due to the structures that tools are now providing because of cloud services. You know, like basically as more people use a tool, the cost of that tool goes up quite a bit, especially as you add elements to it. Like there's other types of extensions that they'll have, plugins and things like that they'll charge for. And so these costs can actually increase and get in the way of your ability to scale. And so you have to really look at like the big picture of what you're doing and take that step back that I think Erik's suggesting, which is what is the goal that we're hoping to accomplish, and then figuring out basically a tool that is as specific as possible in accomplishing those goals. Because if it's much more than that, it can in many ways hinder it.
Because your budget doesn't change if you have the software. Your none of the other variables are changing. Presumably, one of the reasons that you want automation or more tools that can help you scale is probably because you've reached the point that you're tired of just throwing people at a problem. Yeah. You've reached a point where you can't just keep adding people to the team and expect that to be a legitimate solution. And so when you're at those inflection points, you know that the variables aren't going to change when you add the software. And so you've got to put a framework in place for the software to actually work for you. And that includes having a understanding what the true costs really are in money, understanding what the true costs are in time in terms of spinning it up, understanding what the switching costs are going to be if something doesn't work out and you have to leave that platform, understanding what your expectations should be in terms of a learning curve. All of those things are really super important, and they're all costs, and they're all things that you have to go through in order to get a platform up and running. It is a process. It is difficult. It does take time. And so, but you still have to make that investment and understand how it's going to help you suit your goals at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think a lot of people seek tools to basically fix internal issues that they have, to like almost fix team members and things like that. And it never works that way. It ends up doing the opposite. It ends up breaking them instead. And so you have this, I think there is a high risk tolerance for getting tools, because when we can say this object will help us accomplish something, we simplify what that means in our head, because it's an object. We seem to be able to, like, I don't know, objectify it a little bit easier. But then when it's people that are really the answer to the problems that you're trying to solve, we have a lot harder, I think, of a time conceptually understanding what we need to make people do to get to that point. And so that's why I think like we avoid that in our heads and then seek out tools to solve those problems, instead of like basically saying, what is a tool that our people truly can't accomplish on their own? Like, what are they incapable of doing?
And the name itself is sort of misleading. It's automation. We still use the term marketing automation, and yet there's very little that's automatic about it. Everything has to be set up, configured. We have to work through what those automations look like. We have to be prepared to measure their effectiveness and adjust them. We have to. So even when we're up and running, there's very little that's actually automatic about marketing automation. There's still a lot of work that has to be done in terms of monitoring and maintenance and things like that. And these are all things that you have to be prepared for. And so, but of course, we've gotten a little bit off the topic, but the main thing is that at the end of all of that, the juice has to be worth the squeeze.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like the marketing director is dead set on a new marketing suite. So, you know, her question was, how do we know if we're making the right choice? And I think you both have kind of touched on that.
The right choice is going to be if there's a plan in place that aligns the current marketing assets, and that's human resources, financial, et cetera, where the marketing assets are aligned properly with the goals, and the software is just a tool to help connect those points.
Yeah. Software won't make a statue out of marble, but it could help you chisel through some of the big blocks faster.
Right.
That's about it.
And to go back to your point in the beginning, Greg, you know, the efficiencies, there's a lot of work up front, but you can gain a lot of efficiencies and scale with a better marketing suite. So in the end, even though there may be a little bit of pushback and hesitancy from the team, this could be a better thing for them.
I've seen so many of them be worse, that it's like, because we end up defaulting to tools that everybody else uses, because they feel comfortable, and everybody's like, this is what everybody else seems to be using, so why wouldn't it work for us? And it's really hard to get people to change tracks. And so for us, it would be hire somebody who's outside and neutral, like somebody who's familiar with these tools, that doesn't have any skin in the game as to what tools you use. They're not making anything on the back end and some sort of, retainer or whatever. they basically have the ability to help guide those processes. And those individuals end up being critical to any sort of, I would say, shift towards scalability. I think it's very rare that you could see those pulled off internally, even though that's often what businesses will do, because they don't want to pay those outside services. Like a lot of times what they're doing is trying to avoid having those extra people involved. That's part of their goal. And so that would be I think the worst thing you could do is basically more tools, more problems, and more people. So that tools doesn't equal less. It just equals the ability to do more.
And to jump on what Greg was saying a little bit, if you look at the way that this question was worded, we've got a person in a decision-making role that is dead set on doing something.
A lot of red flags.
And this person, Ann Kay, has chosen to talk to us instead of her director. And so what we've got is potentially, and I might be reading too far in between the lines, but we've got potentially a situation where somebody doesn't feel empowered to be asking these kinds of questions, and the nature of hiring a consultant to help you work through that process is designed to eliminate that, because presumably you're paying that person to be able to tell you that you're wrong. And that's a license that a lot of employees in a department don't have.
Right. Yeah, but conversations like this, you're helping Ann kind of understand her situation a little bit better, and some talking points to take back to her director. Hopefully have a conversation around this.
Well, especially if what I've seen happen is a lot of times these people's jobs end up riding on it. Like they'll be essentially handed down get this implementation up and running. And then, the people who sold it to them tell them it's going to take 6 months. It ends up taking a year and 6 months. And so then the question becomes like, is this something you're willing to take on as your job for the next, at a minimum, year, and then also push through all of those barriers that you probably have internally to make it implemented and integrated properly into the entire business?
Right.
And so that's what we often will ask people up front is like, we're willing to go through this and help, but this also is going to require a lot from you. And is this what you want your job to be? So that's what I think a lot of the leaders often are trying to avoid. They tell people it's going to be easy, and they tell people that they could get a lot of things done. It's not often the case. It provides challenges in ways that they didn't foresee.
Yeah. All good information, guys. Any final thoughts?
Use tools to do things that you can't otherwise accomplish. But if it's things that can be done, then focus on your team first and the things that people could do internally. And then when their desk is filled with paper and they can no longer handle that workload, and they're hitting their breaking point, then you could justify the expense of not just the tool, but the experts that you're going to need to help everybody out. Right.
Good advice.
Never two things. I mean, number one, never don't ever let don't ever confuse software with strategy. And because the software doesn't solve your problems, the software gives you tools that you could potentially utilize in solving problems if you wish. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is that Trevor, I'm just so glad that you got to talk to me today.
Like you said, the pleasure is all mine.
It is.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. That was really good information. And if you have any additional thoughts, want to get more clarification, have a conversation, please reach out to us. We're glad to continue this conversation with you individually. So thank you for watching Second Impressions. If you do have a question that you would like this team of brilliant marketing minds, talking about these two guys, to answer, please email us at secondimpressions@estound.com. Thank you for viewing. Be well. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Later, guys.